Hey friends, welcome to week 3. I'm excited about the lectures that I'm going to be sharing with you this week. But I think these lectures will have some framing if we just have some honesty about maybe something that that you experienced, and I know I have experienced, and as I talk with a lot of leaders around the country, they experience as well. And in so many ways and in so many emotions, it comes through as sort of this low-grade pressure and anxiety. To keep up with the latest fads, to stay hip with the kids, to make sure that we're reaching them before culture gets them, or we need to make sure that we get them early because we need them saved so that they're going to be okay when they get older, or whatever it might be. And so there's this impulse, I think, sometimes as we're working with young people to react to all the things that are coming our way. The anxious parent that is worried about their kid, the crisis that we read on the news feeds, the pressure that we feel from leaders that come and hand you or send you an article about the latest demise in young people today, or whatever it might mean. And I find that a lot of times youth ministry can spend its time running around and chasing after the latest pressure point that people say that you need to address, and it's exhausting. And quite frankly, an impossible endeavor, because there's so much coming at us that for you to use all your time to put out all the fires for the latest things that are influencing, impacting our kids can be a bit overwhelming. I think if you remember from lecture 1, I think this is where the sociological imagination can really, really be helpful, right? We remember, well, what can we do in front of us? Who do we need to partner with? And how can we be aware of what's happening in the world, but recognizing the fact that we can't do it all. The problem I find with a lot of youth ministry, and unfortunately I feel like the youth ministry industry perpetuates it, is we get more advertisements coming across our desk of the topic that you need to address today, the curriculum that you need to have to really meet young people where they're at today, the podcast that you can't live without, the book that you better read, because if you don't, you're going to, misinterpret the whole generation, or whatever it might be, right? There's this pressure for us to keep up. And if we don't keep up, we don't feel like we're doing anything well. I don't feel like that's a great way to do youth ministry. I don't feel like it's a great way to do ministry in general, because if all we're doing is reacting and chasing after the next fire that we need to put out, crisis that we need to be involved in, we don't really get to this deeper sense of what disciple making is all about. I actually think, I'll be really honest, I talk with a lot of leaders, and I almost think they have become a bit dependent upon crisis ministry. Like, it's almost easier, right? Like if the world is blowing up and a youth pastor can swoop in and solve a problem quickly, or make somebody feel better, I think that as youth leaders we feel really, really great about that, which we should. I mean, that's in some ways you're wired for that, and that's not all bad. But this sort of reactive crisis ministry never allows us to really think about the formational arc or the approach that we're taking to really help young people encounter God, to be aware of what God's doing in their lives, and to equip them for a life of discipleship. So this requires something quite challenging for youth leaders. And that is to somehow, in some ways, be able to filter the noise of all that's coming at us all the time, and to begin to think about what it means to be pastors of those that are under our care, and to lead them in a faithful way. And so I think what I want to explore today in the lectures that I have is to talk first about this concept of practical theology. What do we mean by that, and how can this methodology help us to be faithful to and responsive to what's happening in our world, but to do it in a way that's thoughtful and helpful and formative along the way. Secondly, I want to talk about this idea of learner-centered pedagogy. So much of what we do in church world and in disciple making and working with young people is education. And we're using educational theory oftentimes to think through and help form young people. And I find oftentimes that the pedagogical approaches taken in a lot of faith communities and Christian organizations isn't actually quite helpful to the formation of young people. And I think there's a better way. So I'd like to unpack those with you. I hope that these frames will give you some ways to not have to react to everything that's coming at you in your world, but gives you a chance to respond faithfully to where you sense God is calling you to meet and lead the young people who are under your care. So let's go.